Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to episode 16 of the Untethered podcast. Today, I'm going to be discussing some of the tax myths that we've got around money, and I specifically want to dive into the belief of the more money I make, the more tax I have to pay, and how that is a badge of honor that I see a lot of people carry. And it's one of the misconceptions that I think people get stuck and caught into. So today I just want to give you a little bit of a different perspective. When we're breaking away from the system and the collective matrix of money, there is a lot of fear in this space. So I'd really like to address some of that because understanding the system is the first element to this before you can let it go, but leaning into the courage around what your money beliefs are and why they are prevalent for you and how they can be actually holding you back from your legacy or holding you back from the work that you want to do in the world because we've got some of those capped ceilings. Some people they even keep themselves below certain thresholds because tax is so complex or it feels complex or overwhelming. I don't want to earn over 80,000 because then I'll have to register for GST. So I'm going to keep my income low so it can stay simple. So these are some of the things that I want to discuss. So grab a cup of tea or a cup of cacao and let's dive into it. I've been living private life for so long, I nearly forget what it's like to do compliance or to have compliance. And it's like when I spent my whole career helping people with compliance, I was always faced with so much confusion and overwhelm. Business owners would come to me and they're outsourcing a lot of that responsibility. And it's the confusion of it all that keeps them limited because if you don't understand the tax system or know how it works and you don't get GST and there's so much legislation out there, it used to be that as accountants we would interpret the legislation and it would be open for interpretation, but now the ATO, it's like they set it and tell you what you have to do. And if you get it wrong, naughty, 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 penalty, penalty, fine, fine, and they'll escalate those things quite rapidly because you've been a naughty little boy or girl and you haven't listened to mummy and daddy government. And that fear that people have around getting it wrong, they would just rather stay in a low income earning bracket than risk getting it wrong. So part of this process is about learning what your rights and responsibilities are and moving into a space of trusting your own judgment. I have clients that have come to me and they're like, oh, I haven't lodged in 3 or 4 years and it's just never felt right. And then, they do that transition and it's like they've been living private life their whole career, their whole business life anyway. And it's an easy transition, but it's the people who are tied up in all of the compliance and the fear and the worry and the stress around that it's like they take on that it's their fault if they get it wrong. So I guess the first real step in this is like getting to the truth of your belief system, getting to the truth of what do you believe about business to be true, right? We're not looking at whether it's right or it's wrong, but we just have to look at, well, what are those core beliefs? And what is that operating system that we're driving from? And the decisions that we're making in business, when accountants prepare these reports, these financial management reports are prepared for tax. So business owners are making decisions in their business based on tax. And Is that true for you? Or do you want to be making decisions in your business based on growth and expansion and the limitless nature of what your potential is in business? So we can see how this stuff can keep us very limited. So if we go back to, I think it was World War II, don't quote me on that, but they brought in tax to fund the wars, right? What was happening in the world with the wars. And what they realized was they made a lot of profit out of that. And it was brought in originally to absorb those costs, but then it continued on after that. And I don't necessarily believe that tax is completely not required. I think there definitely is elements of Australia needs to be treated as a business. It needs to have revenue producing assets, and we need to perform functions in society. But over the years, and especially in the last 10, 20 years, it's gone too far, and it's like the government overreach and control and their quest for increasing taxes across all different areas, whether it's products and service taxes, the GST, whether it's, land tax or property tax, capital gains tax. As it's like there's even this poem that's like everything is taxed nowadays. And it's just got to a point where the assets of Australia, being the citizens, the government is profiting off human activity. And I've looked into the reports, and it's all about the GDP, it's all about the economy, it's all about the value of money and inflation. And it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's like, to what end? And I think there needs to be a balance in the economy. Because when I looked at the tax transparency reports, the major corporations of Australia in energy and mining and resources pay zero tax. And it's the mums and dads of the economy that are left to foot the bill. And this is where I say, imagine what it would be like if you got a pay rise of the amount of tax you're paying. And this is where, for employees, that can be a lot. And for business owners, depending on what level you're at, that can be a cash injection into your business. And there's two ways of looking at it. There's the low income earning businesses that stay under the threshold and limit themselves. And then there's the higher income earning businesses that wear the badge of honor of I made X amount of money and I pay X amount of tax. I'm successful. Are you? Or are you just trapped in a system that's profiting off you to what end? So when we look at these businesses, whether they're not paying taxes at all or whether they're paying lots of taxes, it's like, what are my options? What are the options that are available to me as a business owner in this community? And this is where we look at the community perspective, right? Because when I first dived into this space, I was looking at not-for-profits. And what I realized or what I learned was not-for-profit is less about what you do and more about how you handle the finances because of what you do. And when I looked into it, a not-for-profit is actually like if you look at a for-profit company and then a not-for-profit company. So a for-profit company has shareholders and pays dividends. So the profits are distributed to the shareholders. A not-for-profit company still sells products or services for the community's benefit, but they don't have shareholders and they don't pay dividends. So when I was looking at all of the businesses that I was supporting with compliance, and I was looking, what products and services are you selling? What's your contribution to community? How are you handling the funds? And I uncovered that pretty much 99% of small business, family-run business, they're in business, creating income, creating revenue, and they provide for themselves, provide for their families, and then invest the rest back into the business. They never actually pay out dividends. So this is where I think the restructuring and the moving to the private for these family-run businesses and community organizations can really support those families. And then the major corporations can be the ones that do pay the dividends and do have the shareholders and raise equity from community, can be the ones that foot the bill. And it's not that I feel like these companies knowingly ended up here. I think that they learn the system. The top one percenters, the people that are the ones in control, the ones making the money, making the moves and controlling the economy, they learn commerce and they learn. When I was looking at some of the annual reports of these companies, and how they were managing the financials. Like, this is where I bring in my accounting background. And, when I'm reading financial reports, I can see what's there, I can see what's not there, and I can see what's hidden as well. I can put it, it's like it tells me a story. And the problem is that you can make financial reports look any which way you want, with balancing adjustments and like end of year journals. And, when I looked at these reports, I was seeing how they were paying disbursements out. And I was looking at their membership fees, payments to trusts, private trusts, public trusts, associations, board remunerations, like just looking at how the companies are managing their finances, and most of it gets funneled, like it gets funneled out to the private. So they learnt those accounting standards and their international accounting standards. And I guess that kind of knowledge is not available to the everyday man and woman. But with the age of information and people coming together from all different backgrounds, starting to critically think, starting to go, hang on a minute, this doesn't add up. These numbers don't add up. Something doesn't feel right. How come they can do that, but we can't? How come they get to benefit of their legal structures and knowing the system, but the people that need it the most can't? A lot of people come into the space and they're in fear. They're like, what if they just change the legislation and then no one can do it anymore? And you got to understand that there's so many perspectives to this. It's so deeply embedded and ingrained that it is going to require, I do see massive change happening, and I do see the evolution of society happening as a result of this. But with any type of change, there's always resistance and there's always difficulty and there's always things we need to overcome. So it's not like, okay, this is what's happening in our economy. We can't change it, but we can educate ourselves and try and do our best to play our part and our role in bringing equality back. It's social justice. There shouldn't be poverty. There shouldn't be health issues and sicknesses. And if you even look out into society right now, people are struggling, and it breaks my heart. People don't get the benefits that the government promise. Or even if they do get those benefits, it's tied up in so much red tape that it makes it near impossible to even receive those benefits. Homelessness is on such a rise. It's scary. The cost of living has gone up. People are looking for ways to save money, but they're afraid to look at the tax because they think it's a necessary evil. So with all that stress and all of that fear, someone coming to me in this space and wanting to learn and wanting to break free and wanting to, you know, I don't take it lightly, right? Because we have to look at our finances from a very holistic perspective. And this is why I call myself the spiritual accountant. and have gone through all the evolutions of the spiritual accountant, many deaths and rebirths. But in this newness of the spiritual accountant, I guess this new, I guess, deep desire to genuinely help people that are struggling. I don't want to perpetuate the fear or perpetuate the overwhelm and replace it with something else. So when people are in financial struggle and financial ruin, everyone's financial situation is different. And you have to look at, well, how am I receiving money first? Am I swapping time for money? Am I an employee? Am I receiving Centrelink? Do I want to start my own business? Or is that too overwhelming and I'm not ready? Or I don't feel like I have any kind of business to start? Or how am I in my business? Am I stressed out? Am I burnt out? Like you have to look at where you're currently at. And sometimes moving away from a system that is broken and learning the new way is too much for your nervous system to handle. It's too much information. I'm in too much fear and overwhelm. So there has to be a grace period to allow you to bring yourself back to balance. And that's your nervous system regulation. And this is where I really want to empower people in their financial decisions and say, hey, you might not have the answers. You might not know what the other side looks like, but let me share something with you today. You have the ability to renegotiate or restructure your financial decisions. So when it comes to how you make money, how you spend money, what debts you have, what outstanding taxes you have, what compliance obligations you have, I don't say just stop because that would be very reckless. And when you don't know, don't do anything. I say pause. Let's just pause for a minute. You've got to regulate your nervous system, come back to some like peace. And that can be really hard when you're in financial trauma. And your people need to survive, right? And if you're in survival mode, focus on that. And you have the power to renegotiate your employment agreements. You have the power to pause and hold off on loan repayments. You have the power to just start looking at some of your financial obligations. And what I usually do with people is I'll go through and I'll go, well, how much money are you making and how much are you spending, right? Because most people are fragmented between past, present, and future money, right? They're always paying back the past. They're struggling to provide for the present and they can't even think about the future because they keep borrowing from their future self and they're always paying back the past. So this is a fragmentation. And what I do with people is I take them through a bit of an exercise where, okay, let's list out your obligations. What are your current financial obligations? And if you can put it under past, present, or future, right? So under the past, list out all of the debts, right? Credit card debt, mortgage debt, unsecured debt, tax debts. How much of your income is going to that? Then we list out our present. What are our present needs? Our present financial commitments, our rent, our food, our electricity, our phone bills, our cost of living, right? We list out all of that. And then we list out the future. So, how much are you putting towards your future? How much are you saving? How much are you contributing to your future? And a lot of people, that column is empty because we're still just paying back the past and trying to survive. So, the process of financial sovereignty is going through all of those past agreements that we had and learning your power, your role, your responsibility, and your duty in those agreements. And then securing your future so that you can provide for the present moment and then clean up that past. So I think my best advice for people who are in that state of financial distress is to just pause, right? Because there's also a lot of guilt and shame around that, of those past agreements that we got ourselves tied into unknowingly, and now we feel trapped. I don't know how many people have come to me and they're like, Abby, I was thinking about ending my life until I learned, because that financial pressure is too much. They can't handle it. And I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way. You weren't told about these agreements. There was not full disclosure. So if we can just pause and give yourself some grace to make a decision, and it's not a decision of, okay, yes, I'm going to, shift, or no, I'm going to stay. Because we have to critically assess this. Everyone's situation is different. So it's not a yes, it's not a no, it's just, hang on a second, I'm on a hamster wheel. I need to just get off for a minute and assess the situation and work out what is best for myself and my family first. And then usually it's from those kind of calculations from the assessment that we can then open up some decisions around that. So there's a common misconception that if you move to the private, you can't receive Centrelink. So the truth of the matter really is that Centrelink, when you receive Centrelink, it's not Centrelink that's paying you. You log into Centrelink and you can see some accounts there. Those accounts are what's called a common fund, right? And in that common fund, it's attached to your estate, your birth certificate, which is a secret trust, and estate that has a value in it. So the funding that you receive from Centrelink comes from your estate. It's just got all this red tape and limitation around whether or not you can, and all this criteria, and be a good little citizen and a good member of society. And it's actually designed to keep people very broke, right? Because then they'll assess you yearly. And in that assessment, you have to declare your income, your assessable income. And if some people are also earning money as well as receiving the Centrelink, if it's assessable taxed income, it can limit the amount of Centrelink that they receive. But when you move to the private and you have all new agreements and you're in a separate jurisdiction, that income becomes non-assessable. It's non-assessable, tax exempt, because you're now self-determined. So what that means is through the Centrelink assessments, you're not declaring that revenue because it's non-assessable income. So this is where it can actually be a tool for some people to help them grow their revenue whilst still having that financial support there. It doesn't affect it. There are nuances to that. Everyone's circumstance is different, but depending on your circumstance, I always look at Centrelink as it's your own money that comes from your estate. So don't feel guilty if you receive it. It's not a bad thing. And I know that there are a lot of families out there that are relying on that and they need that. So use it. Use it. If we can now go beyond Centrelink and we look at NDIS payments. So again, it comes back to agreement, and the NDIS agreement is a public agreement. So if you're receiving NDIS payments, that's public income, and then that's assessable and taxed income, depending on your situation. So this is why the assessment of your financial position is necessary, because you have to look at all the ways that you're receiving and all the ways that you plan to receive in the future. And then just allocating, what is public and then what can go private. So then we can look at people who are not on Centrelink, and there are a lot of people out there that are employed, they're not on Centrelink, they're earning minimum wage, paying lots of taxes. And it used to be that a couple of years ago, we didn't have solutions for those people because an employment agreement is public. It's under Fair Work agreements and public. And there's a lot of pushback on compliance for the employer, right? So the employer pays the wages, pays the tax on the wages, pays the super on the wages, pays the work cover and any other payroll tax, right? There's so much, like even in the construction industry, like the construction industry is so debilitated. The construction businesses in all the taxes and insurances that they're paying on their workers just to show up for a job. So this is where there has been development in the space and unions created to assist the employee if they choose to want to change those employment agreements. Under law, under international law and the Roma statutes, you're able to request your employer to not withhold that tax and create a new agreement. So in construction, there's a lot of enterprise agreements, and these enterprise agreements supersede like fair work agreements. So this is where there has to be a negotiation around that. And the union was created because, one person here and there discussing it with their employer, as this stuff is it's not mainstream, right? So there are some people out there that is like when they start talking about the employer can get their back up because it's new and it doesn't make sense. But this is the education process. And I look at it like this. If you think about all of the construction and mining guys in our economy and how much money they make and then how much taxes they're paying, and this is a whole industry that requires such a huge overhaul. And if those agreements can be negotiated and more money goes into the pockets of the workers, it's better for the employer and it's better for the worker as well. So that also requires a lot of re-education, and we're not coming at these conversations from a place of righteousness or anger. If we look at the crux of it, it just comes back down to the state of our economy and families just needing more to survive. You look at how much taxes have increased over the last 10 years, it's doubled, yet incomes have remained the same for employees. So at some point, something's got to give. And it's either going to be, you know, the economy collapses and a lot of people go into severe financial hardship, or the people rise and they push back on this because it's really not fair. It is not fair. This is social justice. Our construction industry and mining industry is also part of the backbone of our economy. Why are they the ones left to foot the bill? So we have these solutions available. There's the Freedom Union, which is freedom-union.org. And that is a separate group to myself, but we're very supportive because it's not just little old me. There's many that are really advocating for change in our economy and our society, but a change for the better. When I say it's not just me and there are others out there, there are a lot. You go on TikTok these days and there's a lot of different accounts sharing all sorts of governmental corruption and tax truths and, structuring and private foundations, private associations, PMAs. And, I think I copped a lot of the flack because I have been so vocal about it on social media for quite a number of years. But you have to understand that people are hungry for this information, and there's a lot of consultants and a lot of people sharing this information now. And I guess when it comes to the sharing of this information, your due diligence is required because there are people out there that aren't informed and are templating things and sharing reckless information. I had someone work and with me and learn from me who is now sharing posts about tax. And it's like, honey, you only stepped into the tax space a few years back. You know, so they think when they learn one piece of information, they become this, guru in it. And I think the true testament of knowledge comes from experience. And I innocently learned the whole system through my degrees, through being in practice for many years. So when I share information, on the flip side of it, it comes from a deep understanding of the one side to then learn the other side. So it's like a constant dance of using years of knowledge and experience. So I guess it comes back to following your intuition and your gut, following what feels good for you and your family. And before you invest any kind of money into a solution, just ask questions. And even if you ask a question and you don't understand the answer, say that. I don't understand the answer. It sounds like a lot of gobbledygook or jargon or legalese. It's not landing. Can you give me a metaphor? Or can you explain that in a way in layman's terms so I can understand it? Because the people who have surface knowledge and not the depth of experience will come unstuck, and you'll notice. You'll notice that. But I also look at it like there's so many of us that are sharing these truths now, and we're all working towards the same goal. We're all working towards the same direction. And imagine how beautiful it would be if everybody could come together and share their resources and knowledge and experience and collectively support people. Like it's going to take a village. And I think a lot of egos get in the way, a lot of greed gets in the way as well. And people see it as a way to make money or profit off people's fear and unknowingness. And that's why I'm always so open and honest as much as I can with people. Yes, I can help you. No, I cannot. If the decision doesn't feel good, don't make it until it does. And just find those trusted sources. And, I've got a team around me. I've got trusted sources. I don't listen to random articles and YouTubes. I go to legislation and government documents. Where are you getting your information from? That's important. And what's the level of support that's going to be provided for you in the event of something happening? I think that's been the biggest thing. I'm not responsible for your salvation, but if you are willing and have the courage to take that responsibility, I'll 100% walk beside you until the very end, until the very end. So it's a bit of a minefield. And if you're on the Untethered podcast and you're still listening and you're still here, thank you. I appreciate you and I love you, and it'll be okay. There's so much goodness happening, and I just see so much positivity as a result of this. Like I can't, people don't get to see what I see. And when you can focus on the positives of it and just process that fear as it comes up and meet it and address it, we have to go in with open eyes and an open heart. When people are open to learning more, I have the resources and the information to show the proof because that's what people need. They need to see the proof. They need to see, okay, if I make this decision, will I be okay? Will my family be okay? Because the number one fear is like, I'll end up in jail. And, this is why I do the untethered sessions because it's the entry. It's the entry into this information and to learning more. And I start with sharing some of the government documents. I'm sharing information from BDM. I'm sharing information from the tax websites. I'm sharing information from the Bureau of Statistics. I'm teaching people about fractional banking and how the bonds are created and how currency is created. So once you see, all of these resources and you piece it all together, I think this is the beauty of the age of information. The age of technology and the age of information is this has become available to us so we can learn. And it can be a bit, of an eye-opening experience to see it firsthand. And some people, they want to bury their head in the sand and they don't want to see it. Because what would that mean if this is true? There are a lot of people that reject it and condemn it and criticize it and tinfoil hat and, she's a criminal, whatever. And it's like, well, it's because you're so indoctrinated into what you've been told and what you've been led to believe that if you accepted that it was true, then what would that mean for you and your family? And how much have money has been taken from you and your family that maybe didn't need to? And it's like that reality and that harsh truth can be very disruptive. So a lot of people will reject it. Even accountants reject it. I had some posts shared, some very unsavory posts shared about me into a tax agent group a few weeks back, and I kind of laugh about it. And it's like, yeah, well, my very existence challenges them, and everything that they've learned. And it's like, I'm not out to wrong you. But if you had an open mind and an open heart and listened to what I teach, I went through my own ego death around that out of compliance. And that was tough. But if you learned and you saw it and you had that open heart for that information, it could change the course and the trajectory of your life. And it doesn't mean everything you've done to this point is wrong or bad. But I come back to the notion that people need to agree on some level that what is happening right now is not working. So if we want to create new and move into a society that is provided for in the way that it needs to be, some things do have to change. So with all that being said, I know today's been a bit of a deep dive. There's been a lot of information and I've shared some concepts that might be new. I just want to leave you with just finding that grace for yourself and for your family. I know things might be tough, but finding that grace and coming back to what's true for you and your family and what's needed for you and your family, and then driving from that place, that's why this exists. It's for the mums and dads. It's for the mums and dads that are really struggling. So just find that grace, find that space, and just know that everything will be okay. But I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you want to join me for more, you can jump over to my Facebook group, Untethered, and I run my webinars. They're completely free. So I run them regularly if you'd like to jump onto one of those and learn a little bit more. My name's Abbey Rose. I'm the spiritual accountant, and I'm here to help prosperity rise for humanity. Thanks for listening. Big love.